Welcome back, everybody. Today, I've got another AI stock that we are looking at. It is SoundHound AI, ticker symbol SOUN, and this is an application software company with a current market cap of about $1.6 billion. And so what exactly is SoundHound AI? Well, they're a global leader in conversational intelligence, essentially using voice recognition to allow its customers and users of its software to do many different things. In this case, they're really focusing on smart answering, smart ordering, and dynamic interaction in real time. So that's like, when you ask a question, it's kind of like a Siri, but Siri in very real time, much more realistic language, real voice. We'll see a demo here, this dynamic interaction demo. I'm going to play a short clip of this guy making an order on his for a meal, and you can see how the product works.
Can I get a pulled pork burger with a deli bun and mustard and pickles? I'd also like a kid's mac and cheese with milk and yogurt and a large Coke and French fries. We can edit the cart with voice. Make the Coke a small, I don't want the French fries, and change that to apple juice for the kids' mac and cheese.
So that's all I'm going to play right now. You kind of get the point. If you want to watch the entire video, it is on SoundHound's investor relations website. And obviously I do want to make the note that this is a product demo, so it's in a very controlled environment. They've probably planned everything they're going to say for weeks in advance. So this doesn't necessarily mean that the product is always this perfect, but you got to admit it is pretty darn good. So this is the technology that everybody's excited about with SoundHound, and that's why we saw the stock take a massive run up just a couple weeks ago. And so now that we have an idea of what SoundHound's technology is and why that is so exciting, let's get into the financial numbers. But before we do that, really quickly, can you please take a moment, just like this video and subscribe to my channel? As a small YouTuber, it really helps me out and it shows me what kind of videos you guys like to see. As always, thank you for spending your time here, and let's get into those numbers. SoundHound's revenue growth has been massive over the last 5 years, growing at about 60% per year. And that growth is expected to continue, although at a slightly slower pace, maybe like 30 to 40%. The company is definitely not profitable. They, on average, lose about $60 million a year in their annual EBITDA, but this is a very young company with a startup kind of mentality and technology, so that's just the stage we're in. They're going to be burning a lot of cash, but they have the technology in place. Operating earnings per share looks much better, but I will mention that we should take that with a pinch of salt because this company has continued to offer more and more shares to the market. And when they do that, that means that a negative earnings per share gets more and smaller and smaller. So instead of becoming a larger number, it becomes a much smaller negative number. So this is more of a result of the shares that they've offered rather than actually growing. On the bright side, though, gross margins are very good and continuing to improve, currently hovering around 70 to 75%. Operating margins, again, very ugly. This company is in a cash burn stage at negative 131% in the last 12 months, but this is to be expected. And of course, return on assets looks much the same because the company's not making money, but this is something that the company can't fudge quite as much. And so it is quite significant that this return on assets is getting smaller and smaller, even if it is still stuck at negative 33%. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the doozy of SoundHound. We're looking at their shares outstanding. The company did go public in 2022, so all of the numbers before that kind of represent privately held shares. But since 2022, this company has been offering tons of shares. They offered 50 million more in 2023. In the trailing 12 months, they've offered another 70-ish million shares. And so they're really showing no signs of stopping. This company will continue to offer shares, and that will dilute your ownership over time. To get to some brighter news, the company's cash position is very strong, currently sitting at about 200 million. So that will help cover a lot of the company's costs, and it'll help do so for a decently long period of time. But you do need to keep an eye on this cash balance number because the company's burning through so much money. We need to make sure that this number doesn't get too low so that the company is in jeopardy. Overall, their debt position is good. It's currently sitting at about $85 million in outstanding debt, which means that if SoundHound needed to, they could pay off all of their debt tomorrow, which is always great to see. And as a consequence of that, we can see that they have a negative annual net interest expense of about $17.5 million, meaning the company is earning $17.5 million every year based on the interest they receive from their cash and short-term investments, minus the interest they pay back on their debt. So this is always great to see, and it says that the company, at least for now, is in a decent position. And so moving over to our price to earnings chart, there's not a lot we can garner from this because the company's always trading at a negative PE. It's a bit more difficult to judge in a chart like this. But what I will say is that the better deals then would generally occur when we are above this red line instead of below it. So the red line represents the average PE since becoming a publicly traded company of negative 6.78. It's currently at a PE of negative 12.41. So that means that potentially SoundHound could have in price to reach that average PE. But for these kinds of companies, there's really no easy way to predict how the stock is going to react to its actual earnings because it's more about what's the potential in the future, not what's happening today. The value chart is equally unhelpful. All we can see right now are the prices, but I do want to point out that SoundHound has a projected compound annual growth rate of about 30%. There are major differences between differing analysts on what this CAGR is supposed to be. I chose 30 because it felt like a decent in between. I've seen as low as like 15 to 20. I've seen as high as like 50%, but most people fall between 25 and maybe 40%. So I went with 30. And so to kind of help with these projections, because I don't have a great way of showing it, I went to Zacks.com, and this is showing their 12-month EPS consensus estimates. So to read this chart, the black line is the price. The blue line with the green dots is the actual earnings results. And then these green dots with the dashed green line in between, those are the projected earnings results. So SoundHound is clearly expected not to be profitable anytime into the near future, but we are seeing a consistently less negative earnings per share estimate. I should also point out that over the past month, estimates have gone up slightly by 2.2%, which is generally a good thing. If analyst estimates continue to be raised, then the stock generally follows those estimates. But Zacks does rate this a number 3, which on their scale is a hold. They don't view the value as being extremely low and must buy, but they also don't view SoundHound as being overvalued. So take that for what it's worth. I, of course, will share my thoughts in the next slide. And so here we are. As always, I want to share some pros and cons of the company before I give my final thoughts. And to start out, what I really like about SoundHound is that the technology, it appears to be very user-friendly and very responsive. Obviously, if they're looking to make a lot of money on this product, it needs to be good. And from the product demo that we watched, I do think that they are on a really strong track. The voice recognition is very good. Second, the software can be applied to many industries as well as other softwares. There's really no limit as to where we could put these kind of voice recognition, voice commanding, and voice interaction type softwares. And so it has the chance to really make people's user experience for all sorts of things much easier. And so I think that that's a really good pro for SoundHound because that means they could expand into so many different directions with their software. And third, of course, there are still decades of growth for AI ahead. We're in the very early innings of anything. I mean, we're probably not even out of the first inning of what AI has as a potential. There's so much growth available that as long as SoundHound can stay relevant, they will benefit from that growth, and that will probably take the share price much higher over the course of many decades. Of course, there are several cons too. First and foremost, AI is incredibly competitive. And I mean, we're talking about SoundHound, a very small, sub $2 billion company, and they're competing against the likes of Google, Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, OpenAI, all of these massive companies with way more resources. And so that doesn't mean that a small company like SoundHound can't succeed, but in the kind of competitive landscape we have today, there is a lot of potential for a competitor to come out with an equal or better product. Second, the company is in its cash burn stage, and that always comes with risks. Some companies, and actually many of these kind of startup companies, never leave this phase and they eventually all go bust. And I'm not suggesting that's going to happen to SoundHound, but in this cash burn phase, there are a lot more risks because there's interest rate risk on the debt they hold. There's a risk that they will burn through more cash than they can secure through other investments. There's just the risk that, some crazy black swan event like what happened in 2020 occurs and all of their funding dries up, all of their lending dries up, everything. So these types of companies are very speculative, and I want to make sure that you are aware of that. And finally, SoundHound is really using its shareholders as its personal piggy bank. Now, as a shareholder, you might not like seeing that, but as someone from the outside, I don't currently own this stock. I do think it's probably very intelligent. Take the hype where you can get it, and every time your stock price goes up, offer some more shares because it's a great way to raise cash without having to take debt, without having to sell off assets or make unfavorable partnerships in order to secure lending. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing for a company in this stage of development. But what I will say is that if you are buying this stock, expect your ownership portion as a percentage of outstanding shares to continue to absolutely shrink. I mean, this company is offering shares at like 20 to 50% of its shares outstanding every single year. So you are bound to lose ownership percentage over time. And if that doesn't bother you, great. But if it does, that's a big red flag to stay away from the stock. And so finally, what are my thoughts? Well, first and foremost, this is absolutely not financial advice. Please remember that. Always do your own due diligence. But with that said, I think that SoundHound has a ton of potential. Now, will that potential be realized? I don't know, and it might be worth a bet because the risk to reward here is potentially very skewed in a positive way. But of course, I think that that is a long-term proposition, and if you're looking to just hold on to SoundHound for a year or two, if I was a betting person, I would bet that the stock price is probably going to come down from where it is today. Maybe not because of the financial results, but more because of all of the shares that this company continues to offer. I mean, when you throw shares at the market like that, you need buyers to step in, and eventually you're just going to push the price of your stock down because the people who own the stock are going to be like, hey man, why do you keep diluting me? And that might drive them to sell off the stock over time. But of course, if you are interested in the technology this company owns and you are confident in what it brings to the table and you're willing to hold the stock for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, this might be a very opportune time to invest in SoundHound. But of course, those are just my thoughts. Again, not financial advice. Please do your own research. Please make your own decisions and recognize that investing in a company like this especially has far, far more risks and you could lose your entire investment. But with that, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you have not already, leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and comment down below, what do you think about SoundHound? Let me know what other stocks you're looking at. I would love to have conversations with you guys. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.